is Dan Shunk, and I'm a Solution Manager for SAP Ariba. With this video, I'm going to give you an overview of guided buying and talk about its design principles. Before I get into the specifics of Ariba guided buying, it's important to understand the three high-level innovation goals that drive the design principles of guided buying. These innovation goals are persona-based user experience, deep supplier engagement, and using data to drive decision-making. With guided buying, users have a single location to go to create a request across all of their buying channels. The first two innovation goals are critical to allowing this to happen. A persona-based user experience allows a user to access guided buying and have personalized and curated content to allow them to more naturally and easily find what it is they're looking for and create the request itself. Deep supplier engagement is equally critical, as the supplier may need to be involved in the procurement process before the purchase order is sent. With deep supplier engagement, a supplier needs to be engaged in a way that's quick, easy, and frictionless. Now, in order to understand guided buying, it's important to understand the different solutions that a procurement department uses to help evaluate, strategize, and execute their spend management strategy, and to define the policies that drive spend compliance. These tools are traditionally built with the sourcing and procurement professionals in mind. It is not focused on the casual user who may only access the system less than 10 times a year. Guided buying provides that single location for a casual user to access, find, and create these requests across all the buying channels. Traditional procurement solutions tend to focus on a simple process of creating a purchase request, either through an ad hoc request or catalog search, adding that item to the shopping cart, submitting that request for approval, and sending the purchase order to the supplier. With guided buying, we not only take into account these simple requests, but also look at the request itself and see if it might drive a more complex request, such as creating a sourcing event or creating a new contract. When a supplier defines the request that they're looking for, they're being driven by the policies created by the category manager. These policies include who needs to approve the request, what information is required for the request, which suppliers that are preferred and should be worked with as part of the request itself, and finally, what happens to the request after it's been submitted. Once the request is submitted, that's where the supplier becomes the final piece of the puzzle. The suppliers themselves need to be involved throughout the procurement process and need to be involved in a way that's very quick and easy for them to provide the information required, such as a quote, and allow the suppliers to provide the category manager with information about who they are, what their capabilities are, so that the category manager can identify which suppliers are preferred and present that information to the end user so that they're following policy compliance. Now let's take a look at how this works in a live demo system. After logging in, a user is presented with a landing page that contains all of the content that's curated for them based upon their role and responsibility in the organization. If the user knows what it is they're looking for, they can easily go to the search bar and type in what they're looking for to search across all of the catalogs loaded into the system, and they can go find the item, add it to their shopping cart, and submit it for approval, just as you would expect in a traditional procurement solution. What makes guided buying unique is the concept of landing pages. A landing page acts as a centralized location where a user can access to create requests specific to that category or that department. For example, the marketing landing page that you see here contains everything that somebody in marketing might need to request, including all of the policies and their definitions. This particular landing page, as you can see, starts with simple catalog items that I could add to my shopping cart if I was preparing for an event. Below that are active contracts associated with marketing. So for example, if I needed a visual designer, I can see the rate card for them and add this to my shopping cart and submit it for approval. There's also special request forms associated with marketing and suppliers that have been identified as qualified or preferred for doing marketing type activities within this particular location. Finally, there are popular categories associated with marketing, allowing me to see these categories and create requests there. And finally, there's an ad hoc request form specific to marketing that contains the information most common to marketing folks trying to create a request that's ad hoc. Now, One of the things that I mentioned earlier was that we want to be able to enable users to create a request for any buying channel, but also do it in a way that's very natural for them. So for example, if I'm somebody who's in marketing and I want some market research done, I may be thinking about market research, but I'm probably also thinking about who it is I've worked with in the past in this part of the world. For me personally, I know that I've worked with Magnus Video Service. So if I start looking at the supplier first, you'll notice that all of the different types of requests associated with this particular supplier are also presented to me as well. In this case, I do want to do some market research. So I'm going to be taken to a special form allowing me to fill out what it is I'm looking for and fill out all the information that a category manager requires as part of this form request. As I start to fill out the form, the policy set forth by the marketing department or by the category manager is going to define what happens next when I go to submit this for approval. For example, if I scroll down, you'll notice that for this particular request, there is an actual sourcing policy associated with this. This request not only requires that a sourcing event be created, but by the nature of the different tolerances associated with the form itself, this request will be sent directly to a sourcing agent who will have to manage the project separately. If I change any one of these tolerances, then what will happen is the policy may change as well. For example, by lowering the price, you can see that not only does this still require a sourcing event, but the event will be sent directly to the suppliers, and the administration of collecting the quotes and identifying who to do business with will be managed by myself, the end user creating the request. This allows the category manager to not only define the policies, but the amount of engagement required by the sourcing professionals. By allowing folks to manage the entire process themselves, you speed up the process and allow the supplier to work with the user that they're comfortable with. You'll also notice that in this particular case, because I started with looking at the supplier first, they've already been selected as who will receive the quote. So as a user, I can simply go ahead, create what I'm looking for, looking at the supplier first, and when I'm ready, I can go ahead and submit this and begin the quote collection process. By submitting this request, the suppliers themselves have been notified and can look at the notification and easily respond with the appropriate quotes in a timely manner. Let's now take a look at the supplier experience and their role in trying to provide a quote for this particular request. When a supplier receives a notification to participate in a request for a quote, they'll receive an email with all the information that the requester provided as part of the initial form. Here, the supplier has everything they need to evaluate the request itself, and when they're ready, they can simply respond to the email with all the information that the user requires to successfully evaluate the quote itself. With this approach, we'll engage the supplier in a way that's quick, easy, and frictionless, allowing them to get the information required back to the user in a very timely manner so that they can review their quote and ultimately award. After the supplier has responded with their quote via email, the buyer is notified that they have a new quote to review and can easily access the quote itself by going into guided buying and selecting a previously submitted request. Here, the user can review everything that the supplier has responded with, and when they're ready, they can choose to accept the quote. After accepting the quote from the supplier, the request is then following the standard purchasing request for market research in Latin America as defined by the category manager. This includes all the information required to process the request itself, along with going through the additional approvals that are required in order to turn this into a purchase order. In order for guided buying to fulfill its goal of being a single location for all users to come to create a request across any buying channel, guided buying integrates with outside systems. For example, if I wanted to create a request for contingency labor, it's a matter of doing a quick search or navigating to SAP Fieldglass, and with a single click, I'm taken seamlessly into any outside system to manage my requests. This concludes the overview of guided buying and its design principles. Thank you for your time.